I'm a patriot. That means justice for you should be just as important to me as justice for me. Because whatever America does to me and they're allowed to get away with it, they'll be coming for you. And my name is Gregg Marcel Dixon. I am a teacher by profession. I'm a low country native here in South Carolina. My family's been in the low country of South Carolina, down in the coast in the southern part of the state, since at least the mid 1700s. And I'm currently running for Congress. I'm running to represent South Carolina District 6 in the U.S. House of Representatives. I've always had an interest in my family's genealogy. So I was fortunate. When I was born, all of my great grandparents, except one, were alive. And I even had two great grandparents who were alive. And my father was raised by his great grandparents who were born in the 1890s. And one died in the late 1970s and one died in the early 1980s. They were born 1896, 1895, respectively. So I was born within reach of people who were literally the children of those who were enslaved, or they were raised by people who were enslaved because their parents died. And in the video I posted on Twitter, I talked about my great grandmother, my dear Nana, Justine Washington Brown, who pretty much helped raise me along with my mother. She died at 101 when I was 31 years old. I knew she was raised by her grandparents, but I never thought much of it until one day I was looking through the census records and I found that her grandfather, who would be my great grandfather, was born in Beaufort in 1838. And by all measures, he was definitely born enslaved because he's there on the Freedmen records, the Freedmen Bureau records. Same thing with my great grandfather, who just turned 99 on Tuesday. He grew up surrounded by people who were formerly enslaved. He is still alive. So I literally Skyped him the other day. I spoke with a man who was surrounded by people who were formerly enslaved by the United States of America, and he is still very much alive and well. The Freedmen's Bureau was an agency of the government that was established to help provide for the needs of those who were formerly enslaved and their children. But the Freedmen's Bureau was supposed to help Black Americans gain equity in the labor force, home ownership, land ownership. It was supposed to make sure that we were repaired, that the country repaired the damage they did to us. That never happened. There's a push right now for Joe Biden. I'm going to be nice. I call him slow Joe Crow Biden, but Joe Biden, there's a push for him to bring back the Freedmen's Bureau, which he can do via executive order. Now, Donald Trump was going to do a Department of African American Affairs, not quite the Freedmen's Bureau, but it would have been in that same vein. Joe Biden said to Black Americans, y'all have always had my back, which is we're fools for doing that, and he would have ours. He can, with executive order, bring back the Freedmen's Bureau, and he has not done it. That bureau has an unfinished job of repairing the great inequities that we see here in America, where Black Americans have been in this country longer than nearly all other ethnic groups, and yet we're to the bottom in terms of land and wealth. And that's because the job of Reconstruction never finished. Donald Trump had plans where he was going to invest at least $500 billion into the Black American community. He was going to start a Department of African American Affairs to focus specifically on our needs. He was talking about the damage that illegal immigration causes to Black Americans. There was some good stuff in the plan, even though it was still woefully insufficient. It's more, way more than what we're getting now and what any other presidential candidate has offered. And as far as why Joe Crow Biden has yet to do anything similar, it's because he doesn't have to. Unfortunately, Black Americans, we are a captured electorate, and that is our fault. Reparations is about a debt that is due. It is not to fight against racism. It is not to punish white people. And it is not race-based. Reparations is lineage status-based. So pretty much anyone who is identifying as Black and they are a descendant of an American enslaved or a person who was emancipated by the U.S. government, a freedman, they qualify for reparations. So if you are a Black person and your parents arrived here from Jamaica in the 1970s and you have no lineage tracing back to American slavery, you don't get reparations. Being Black is not enough. If you are a white person and you've been identifying as white your entire life, but you may have an enslaved ancestors, because in the South, especially in states like South Carolina, a lot of white people do, you still do not qualify for reparations. It is for those who identify as Black and they are a descendant of those who were enslaved and then later emancipated by the American government. It's very easy to do because most Black Americans know our lineage very well. My plan calls for recipients to get $2.8 million in cash bond, and instead of the government just giving them a check for $3 million, $50 million would be insane. They pay them interest yearly until the full amount is paid. So that way you don't have super inflation that would definitely happen if you gave 50 million people almost $3 million all at once. It will be paid monthly per interest on the cash bond. But reparations ultimately is something that comes from the federal government. And why? Because the state level, I can't speak for California, but a lot of states simply don't have the tax revenue to pay what is owed. The federal government does. Studies have shown Black Americans actually save more, even though we have the lowest amount of wealth. Black Americans actually save more than any other ethnic group. When the stimulus checks were given out, by the way, $1,000, $1,200, that evaporates, especially for parents. But when the stimulus checks were given out, study after study showed that Black Americans started more businesses than any other group. Black Americans, we are the ethnic group that came out of slavery and built Black Wall Streets. We had no protection from the government. We were being denied our rights, and we was able to build Black Wall Street. So giving Black Americans reparation will bolster the economy. We're not immigrants. Every penny we get is going to go right back into this nation. Whereas a person from another nation, for example, sends at least 50 to 20% of their wealth overseas. It will go right back into the economy. It's a win-win for everyone.